Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today with Ben Young, an SOM alum who is an entrepreneur right here in New Haven. Ben came to visit my class yesterday and today and shared so much excellent advice with my students, and I'm excited to share it with the world. So welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So why don't you tell us about Hugo and Hobie,
Sure.
and then we'll get started.
That sounds great. Yeah. So Hugo and Hobie is a company that I co-founded while I was a student at the School of Management back in 2015, so about 5 years ago, with my roommate actually in business school, Fred Kugelhaus, who runs our DC operations. And essentially what we do is we design and fabricate custom furniture and architectural elements, so like logo walls and moss walls and kind of decorative pieces for commercial clients, so offices and hotels and restaurants. And we do it by partnering with a network of about 75 fabrication shops who are kind of small furniture makers up and down the East Coast from DC to Maine, some welders and woodworkers and upholsterers and glass makers, et cetera. And so we connect these big commercial projects, like a big office, for example, with these smaller manufacturers to be able to build furniture locally and sustainably in a way that builds community.
And the idea wasn't always to work with commercial clients, right? The part about building furniture locally and sustainably was always there, but you thought at first it would just be another e-commerce website, right?
Exactly. So when we were first starting, kind of the basic idea is we felt like there was a missing market for a really great furniture brand, kind of like a Warby Parker, but for furniture. And so what we were doing is we were building designs and selling these collections through our website, and they were flat packed, kind of like IKEA. So, it would ship in the mail, and you'd open the box. But the main difference was that it was very easy to assemble. We thought that was a big pain point that people had. So not too many parts. Two legs, a beautiful wooden top, maybe 5 or 6 screws, and that's it. So it would take less than 5 minutes to assemble. But we still partnered with local fabricators to do all the production, use sustainable materials, all of that. And we found it was really hard. The e-commerce side was really hard. It was really competitive. So people were really excited about buying locally crafted furniture, but they oftentimes wouldn't spend that extra money when there were lots of kind of cheaper options available. And so we kind of stumbled into the commercial market where when we had our website up, commercial clients like restaurants, local restaurants would reach out and say, hey, I saw this great desk that you're selling. I'm opening up a new branch of my restaurant. Do you guys do custom work? And at the time, we didn't, but we said, sure, we can do custom work. And we worked with our local fabricators to kind of help them build the designs they wanted.
It always happens like that, I think, with your business plan. Like, the why, and the why stayed the same for you. And I loved your mantra. It was... What was it about Warby Parker?
It was, oh God, now I'm forgetting.
Sustainable like Patagonia.
Yeah.
Flat packed like
Like
IKEA.
Easy to buy like
And easy like Warby Parker.
Yeah, exactly.
You knew your why, and you had the vision of you're going to connect people with these local fabricators, but then the actual business model, you never actually know it at the beginning as much as you say you do. And it could have gone the other way. With many of my students, they want to create, you start with what you know, which is what you did, right?
Yep.
I think you told the story about how Hugo and Hobie were your grandfathers, you and your roommate, and they both were furniture makers. And so it was something you already knew how to do and were doing on the weekends. So a lot of my students want to start with something they already know and they already do. So they're working on things for Yale students to improve life, for example, mental health on campus or life on campus. And so they start by saying, well, they know their why, they know their product, but then they're like, we're going to sell to Yale and other universities. And I'm just like, I don't know how easy that is. We were just talking about the procurement process. Like, they might actually end up going straight to consumers.
Totally.
But the point is to just build it and see what works, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And something you said really resonated with me, which was start ugly and continuously improve. Like, it can never be perfect, but you just have to build something and sell it. And that was one of the most important things that you mentioned. And it reminded me of this I went to a Silliman tea last night at Silliman College here at Yale, and we had the co-founder of Existing Conditions, which is a bar in New York, and he was just talking about cocktails, but he said the same thing. Whatever you do, whether it's cocktails or poetry or furniture, you need to do it badly enough times before you can make something great. There's no real learning without failure, and that's how innovation works. And it really stuck with me, and I tweeted it and reading it off my Twitter feed because it's just like these lessons, just anyone who wants to create and to be entrepreneurial, that's what you have to do. It's never going to be perfect, and the more you hesitate, the less likely it is going to happen. Just build something.
Totally.
And that's what my students are doing right now. So we'll see if it works, but it was the perfect timing to have you talk to them today.
Oh, that's good.
And another thing that really resonated with me is how you didn't set out to be a social entrepreneur. You set out to build a great product that solves a real problem. And I think all entrepreneurs set out like many social entrepreneurs set out to solve a social problem, but I think it's safe to say any entrepreneur sets out to build a great product that solves a real problem. And I think sometimes there's this line that people try to draw between what's social entrepreneurship and what's regular entrepreneurship. And sometimes it's helpful and other times it's less helpful.
Yep.
But I think the line is starting to blur. And you mentioned that now that you're trying to register as a B Corp, it's kind of like a stamp of approval, like, yes, this is a social enterprise. Yep. And that more and more companies are doing that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, to your point, when we were first starting the company, it was solving a personal problem actually that we were having of we were out trying to buy furniture for our new place and we were struggling to find it. And so we were creating, our business was a creation of a solution to that, there wasn't a company that we wanted to buy from that met that need. So we decided, let's go build it. And I think the social entrepreneurship part has developed over time and even what it means. So, we always wanted to work with local partners to build the furniture and use local hardwoods. And I think it gives back to society in a lot of ways through that. When you're purchasing a product that's, for a customer in DC and it's actually built by a furniture maker that lives in that area. I mean, I think it makes a big impact. But on the other side, we've also built the social impact part through, the years of actually building this company. So one of the things that we do is we're members of 1% for the Planet. So not only do we use sustainable hardwoods, but we also donate 1% of revenue every year to environmental nonprofits. So in our case, we're replanting trees in the region, and we're coming up on planting about 20,000 trees since we started. So, it's this kind of beautiful regenerative process where we're using wood that's sustainably made, but we're also replanting way more trees than we use. And so I think that social impact, it can take on many different levels. And I think becoming a B Corp or in the process of becoming certified is really one of the biggest steps because it's a very sort of rigid and hard to attain criteria that really measures companies on what social and environmental impact they're actually making. And actually looking at companies like Patagonia, who are some of the best at it, and finding ways where they're really good, but there's actually, there's even companies a little bit above. And so I think B Corps help companies assess themselves against other ones and also see what ways can my company improve to be even better at social and environmental impact.
Yeah, and I think that if existing businesses start competing on having social and environmental impact, that's going to make more of a difference in this world than all the social enterprises in the world combined, Yeah. And I think that even, it's great that you donate 1% of your profits and plant trees and all that, but you don't even have to do that. The fact that you're running this company in a way that you make decisions about what's good for the entire ecosystem and are creating opportunities for these small local fabricators using local inputs that's called sustainable development. You're developing economically, socially, and environmentally all the resources around you and contributing to society on all those dimensions. And so that's what I think is hugely impactful. And I think it's the whole ethos behind the School of Management, right, in terms of business and society.
Totally.
So I love that you're doing that. And another thing that I noticed was that as you were building your own company and making your own rules, one of the things you mentioned a lot that you seem to feel strongly about was that you didn't raise funding, which I think a lot of students and entrepreneurs around the world think is, being an entrepreneur means you're building tech and it means you're getting VC funding, right? Like that's
Yep.
what entrepreneurship is today. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. Like you're building furniture and you didn't get funding. And Melissa, my TA, who has also been on the podcast, is running an SME, a small or medium enterprise. And so I think that the entrepreneurial mindset and skill set applies for both of those as well, right?
Yeah.
Is that something that you struggled with, or were you always clear on it? And how did that happen?
Yeah, no, I think we were in a lot of ways kind of the oddballs in our group of startups that were kind of getting off the ground. Like, there weren't a lot of, I don't know if there are any Yale founded furniture companies. So,
Yeah.
we were oddballs in a lot of ways in that respect. But yeah, I think bootstrapping and not raising money, it has its challenges and downsides, but I also think it's one of the best parts of what we do, and has made us just be a really scrappy company, and really focus our energy on areas that really work. And when we were first starting, there were lots of companies around us that it almost felt like the goal was to raise money rather than to create a great company.
Yeah, like that was the indicator of success. They raised money.
Exactly.
And what
like,
have they
therefore I
created?
succeeded.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a much better strategy is go build a great company. And if you happen to be in a position where you do need money, I think you can find it because you've built a great company. But I think too many companies think that they need money in order to build that great company, when actually a lot of the companies, even tech ones, by the way, they don't actually need money. They just need to put in more time and hustle and effort and scrappiness into building that great product that customers will really love. And I think, if you're able to do that and you're able to give yourself enough runway to get there, then you have a company that you can, you're really not, you're the boss. Like you do make all the rules, and like nobody, once you take on money, there's other parties involved. And so I think if you're able to bootstrap, I think it's better for your company. And I think it should be a first solution, not raising money.
Yeah, you raise money if you need it. It's
If you
not
need it.
the goal.
Exactly.
And also I think sometimes raising money in obvious ways can cause you to make different decisions, like there are other decision makers on board, but even in less obvious ways or less direct ways, like you mentioned, if you had raised money, you would have been less likely to pivot away from the original e-commerce
Yep.
idea where you were going to consumers, and you might have just like invested in building that up, and maybe that wouldn't have worked.
Absolutely.
And you would have found it a distraction to actually answer the phone call of the local restaurant that wanted you to go build them something.
Yep.
But then eventually it turned out that for you, that's where there was a great market, and you ended up shutting down the e-commerce website because that was actually a distraction to you at that point.
Yep.
So now you're changing the way businesses furnish themselves, and that's huge. You might go back to, I think,
Yeah.
the individual consumer market now that you've established yourself as a premium product. I think you might be targeting different people who might be willing to pay more for something that has been established to be so beautiful, and they want to have what BCG has or whatever has.
Yeah, totally. No, yeah, we probably, at some point we probably will go into, or at least, we like to think of business as like you're a business scientist. I think with all these things, you experiment with different business models and products, and you see what sticks with customers. And I think there is a world where we'd go back into the individual customer market and probably create a separate website about that. But yeah, it's funny, we get reached out to all the time now on the other side by individual customers saying, "Oh my God, I love the furniture. Can I get a dining table? Can I get a coffee table?" And unfortunately, we have to say no to a lot of people. But it is a kind of signal that interest is out there, and something we might come back to.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be custom made. You would pick top designs and just have an inventory.
Exactly.
So it would be different, but
Different
you could do both.
Exactly.
You gave a lot of really good advice to my students, and one of the favorite quotes that stuck out to me was "Hustle like a New Havener, network like a Yaley, and have purpose like Patagonia." I love that. I think it should be your tagline or something. Do you want to speak to any of those points, or are there any nuggets of wisdom that you would share with a broader audience?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think Similar to the point about bootstrapping and the goal not being necessarily raising money is, I think when people think about businesses, they think only about the big unicorn Googles and
Yeah.
Facebooks and Instagrams. And the reality is that most businesses in this country are small businesses, and they're wonderful businesses. And there's nothing wrong with small businesses, and we are very proud small business owners. And I think to the point of hustle like a New Havener, I think students can learn just as much from the local entrepreneurs that run the restaurants and storefronts and things around the city of New Haven, and learn a lot about what it means to have hustle as a business owner. I think especially when you're a smaller company, those people and that hustle is actually that's the inspiration that you need. Sometimes the really big successful companies, they're almost too far along. They've kind of forgotten what the early days are like.
Yeah.
And so I think like learning from that hustle is huge. And I love New Haven. I love living here. It is a city with hustle, and I think it's something that comes with you. I do also think the network like Yale is, when you go to an institution like Yale, you have a incredible sort of unfair advantage, where you have this amazing network of people that loves to stay connected, loves to help each other, are in places of privilege and power. And I think to not use that network would be crazy. Like you've been given an incredible ticket to be able to kind of have easier access to things. And I think, you should both hustle like a New Havener, but you should use that network heavily. And the last one, yeah, having purpose like Patagonia, I think, I was telling your class that if I was just selling this table and that's all I was doing, making a transaction between a table and a customer that wanted a table, and that was it, a table that had no meaning to me and no meaning on the fabrication side or where it was made or who made it, I think we would have stopped the company. I don't think we would have had that drive. But because we've built a company where we are deeply connected with the furniture makers that we work with and meet with them every day and get really involved in the designs and the spaces that we're creating, replanting trees, kind of in our path with projects, it's so much more meaningful, and it's actually become like really the meaning of the business. So it's kind of bigger than furniture, and so I think if you have kind of a why that's beyond just the thing, I think it
Yeah.
helps you keep going longer.
I think so too. Thank you so much for all this advice, Ben, and thanks for coming back to campus and sharing this with us. And hopefully one day we'll be able to buy your stuff too without having to own a huge company.
Totally. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.